Confession time, as well as a bit of a coming out. I am a Fudd. There, I said it. I might be a queer Fudd. I might be a Fudd who's trying to reform. I might be a Fudd who recognizes that Fudd lore is to be rejected, not to be embraced. But I'm still a goddamn Fudd. This feels a little bit like an AA meeting. Hi there, my name's Finley and I'm a Fudd. And I will openly acknowledge that the vast majority of Fuddness comes from believing myths and comes from tactics and tendencies that you should reject. It doesn't change the fact that I'm a Fudd, and I fucking love this thing. Real quick, today's sponsor is Turtle Lake Tactical, a fantastic website that's been one of our emotional support companies for just a little while now. They sent us this M1911 in order to make this video and demo it. They've got a massive selection of basically anything that you could want, ranging from tactical gear all the way to hunting stuff and everything in between. And in addition to them being an awesome website that has basically anything that you could think of and the ability to order anything that you don't see on their site if you just call them up and ask, in addition to all of that goodness, using the code QueerArmor at checkout will get you 5% off any purchase. But now I have to talk to you as your resident Fudd. Because while I acknowledge I am a queer Fudd, which makes me a bit of a rare breed, Fuddness comes from believing myths. And unfortunately, being a good Fudd means dispelling the Fudd myths everywhere they are. So I'm going to go through some of the myths and some of the memes and go over what people get right about an M1911, what people get wrong, and why I love this thing regardless. My 2 world wars. Okay, I will acknowledge that there has been 110 years of military service for the M1911, and probably more to come. All tactics are personal. A pistol means different things to different people. It might be a defensive tool that you expect to be the only thing you carry. It might be the weapon you were expecting to transition to get the last person when you've run out of ammo in your rifle. And for still more others, it's only ever a backup for when things have gone horribly, horribly wrong. 2 .45 rounds might be more effective than even 29mm rounds in a magazine if your only problem is one last person. So for a lot of Marine units, M1911s are going to be just what they want. They don't want a heavy carry, multi-round weapon to be switching to. They're never going to be using it outside of the brief emergencies where their AR isn't working, where they'll switch to it temporarily in order to solve a situation until they can get their AR back online. Marines are also very unlikely to be in a situation where they wouldn't be able to get back to an armorer in order to get their weapons repaired, or at bare minimum get to some sort of forward supplies and get their rifle replaced. I carry a 45 because they don't make a 46. They make a 46. The 45 is a big, dumb, heavy round. Not that that's a bad thing.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
It's easy to suppress. It's not so much that most soldiers can't handle it. And then on top of that, the 1911 can be set up with basically any caliber that you want or think of, and it probably has in the past. The common ones are 45, 10mm, 40 Smith & Wesson, 38 Super, and 9mm. Those are the major calibers that you will see lots of the major manufacturers making a version of 1911 in. Browning also makes a 380, Sig Sauer makes one in 357 Sig, because of course they fucking do. The British, interestingly, had a batch made in 455 Webley during the war, so occasionally you'll find M1911s chambered in that, even though that's normally a revolver cartridge. You can buy M1911s in 22 TCM. We'll actually have a video on that caliber coming up in the near future. You can either get one made in 460 Roland or get a conversion to 460 Roland, because then you carry a 46. A handful were made in 7.62 Tokarev, although that requires some modifications to the base design. Guncrafter Industries makes one that's technically a 50 cal. Kunin Industries makes one in 357 Magnum, in case you want to, feel like a Desert Eagle without feeling like a Desert Eagle for some reason. And there's far more caliber choices than that. But if you're a true blue American, you're gonna get a 1911 and 45, because that's what God and John Browning intended. Ignore the Mark 18. Look at me. That has too many toys. The M1911 won 2 world wars. Double-stack magazines are no longer the nightmare that they used to be. However, everybody assumes that a double stack is just as capable as a single stack because a lot of the problems are less prevalent. Especially compared to a lot of stuff from the era. 1911s are simply eliminating some of the possible failure points, which is why they were so beloved. Empty. It's clear. I know I said I wasn't going to do many more triggers on this channel because I don't think they're really a useful comparison for people who are new to firearms, and if you're experienced, you'll be going to one of the other channels that does it better. I think this is going to be the last one though, because this right here is my definition of a perfect trigger. So I want to just go through that with y'all, and you can see, compare it to the other ones and see what I mean. I think that comparison footage will be actually useful. So safety off. Just a very, like a tiny little empty space where it catches up, and then a solid glass wall where you can tell there's a hard breaking point, relatively lightweight, and then watch this. It is a perfect trigger, ladies, babies, and gentlemen. Let's do that one more time, because I want you to see what I'm talking about. There's this see this tiny bit of slack right here? This is also going to be something I'll bring up in a minute, but there's just a tiny little bit of play. Not even really like slack, like it's built into the design. Play, like it isn't quite 100% perfect. And then a perfect glass wall trigger with not much weight and just a clean break point. And then that reset, it's loud, it's tactile. This is the trigger that every other trigger should aspire to. Which leads to, how does it shoot? Look, I'm not going to deny, I am a massive geek for these things. On the one hand, it has more recoil than a 9. If you're going into this thinking, oh, it's going to shoot just like a 9mm, it's not. But it's not as overwhelming as you might expect it to be. Perhaps more importantly, the impulse is almost a wider impulse, which ends up resulting in a different amount of force being felt, in the force being felt in a different way. There's definitely more kick, but it feels, walk up to somebody and give them a light tap, and then use the same amount of force and slowly press in, and the slowly pressing in will disrupt them less. For some, it's going to be overwhelming, and it's definitely not something I would recommend as your only option if you've never shot a gun before. But it is not as big of a punch as you would expect it to be, knowing it is the bigger round. Not talking about 1911s generally, talking about this one specifically. This is a Rock Island Armory model. It is about $550 in this spec. It has the nicer not aftermarket, but it has the nicer grips. You can also get the Rock Island Armory model down to about $450 by using wood grips. In terms of a 1911, it's probably on the lower end of what I've seen for terms of like fit and finish. There's tiny little like burrs. The slide has like hard lines into it, which feel almost like it's cutting into your hand when you're pulling back. That said, getting something that would feel nicer would end up costing a lot of money. The kind of work that you would have to do in order to like deburr these edges, in order to like go through and like finely match all of the tiny like 1mm off things exactly into perfect spec, you would spend way too much money. And if you tried to buy a 1911 that was of that quality, you would spend even more, to be honest. If you don't need your 1911 to be pretty, you just need it to be functional. I totally get this. This has been a solid little runner. I've shot about 250 rounds through it. It's not a nothing. It is legitimately a nice carry piece. If you looked at your personal tactics and decided a 1911 made sense, going with something from Rock Island, I would understand, but I'm not sure I would pick something like this, because my use for a 1911 would actually be less tactical. I really genuinely enjoy the way this shoots, but I don't have a use for it in my current tactics as they sit. And because of that, if I'm going to get a 1911, I'm going to get one that's like, either I'm getting something fancy schmancy because I love the way that it shoots, or I'm getting one of the 450 Rock Island models that just has the wood, that doesn't have even like the slightly nicer checkering, going for the super basic one and then upgrading it myself. This seems more appropriate for somebody who wants just one gun. If you live in a state with magazine restrictions, M1911s make a ton of sense, and this is not a bad one. Especially if you're thinking that you're going to have basically one gun, or your other guns are going to be in like very different directions and you only want the one handgun. Yeah, I would absolutely agree that this is a fine model to be carrying. I do really quick want to go over the sights. This uses the traditional Novak style sights, and Rock Island has a really smart system for readjusting them, and so shout out to Rock Island for being able to do like minor adjustments onto your sights relatively quickly. It was a godsend when I was setting this up. Alright, that's it for me. Thank you so much for stopping by and checking out this video. I really do appreciate it. Hit that like button if you want to see more content like this. Hit subscribe if you want to be force-fed videos by me on a regular basis. Make sure you're hitting that little bell too. It actually makes a fairly significant difference. Thanks again, keep being dangerous, and remember, moral doesn't mean legal, and Stonewall was a riot. Peace.